I think there's a lot of miseducation. So
Hmm.
let's start just at childhood, right? We're still, even in the US, I think only half of the states are required to provide sex education. And I think only nine of those states are required to talk about consent. So we're talking about kids in 2024 who, by the way, have access to the internet and where everything that they want to see are being
Exactly.
told, sex is about abstinence and it's about preventing STDs and preventing pregnancy. It's a very sort of sex negative thing. You want to ask about a certain type of sex, you're curious, etc., etc., etc. There's no avenue for it, at least not in a formal asking your parents, asking your teachers, asking your sex education counselor. So I think that's one of the issues. And by the way, you translate that to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's not like we're that much more willing to ask these questions, right? And now
Sure.
one demographic that I work with is women now menopausal, perimenopausal. I'm 45. I see the future very near ahead. A
Right.
lot of women will say that they're very reluctant to ask their healthcare providers about how to maintain their sex life when their bodies are changing at
Hmm.
that stage of
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
So there are certainly, I mean, there are religious misconceptions. People think you go blind if you masturbate too much. That is absolutely inaccurate. So there's a lot of that nonsense that's still floating around. But more
Right.
than those, it's the idea that we're not able to get accurate, fact-based, shame-free information.
Right. And so that goes back to sort of what we were talking about before, because there's a stigma, right? There is this fear of talking
Yeah.
about sex, about sexual health.
Yeah.
And so then you combine that with the fact that there's no education. It's sort of like this never ending cycle, right? Because if people are feeling stigmatized about talking about it, they don't ask the questions, and then there's no one giving education. It just goes round and round and round, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what I'm sort of
absolutely.
hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you look at it just from parents, right? You don't have to hit your kids on the head with, this is how you do it. But we do see a couple of things. We see that parents who are uncomfortable and anxious around the topic make their kids uncomfortable and anxious around the
Hmm.
topic. And parents, on the other hand, who just demonstrate healthy affection, physical affection with their partners,
Hmm.
that's a win right there. Like in our South Asian community, I interviewed a girl recently and she was like, instead of the stories about how my parents were so successful, I wish they had told me the stories of how they were in love when they were in college and they would sneak off and my grandmother would sort of cover for them, right? I wish those
Hmm.
romance stories that were still innocent
Hmm.
and beautiful, I wish those were the stories that we were told. So
Right.
that is part of it. The other thing is, across the world, our healthcare system is still implicit in all of this because you'll hear victims of rape saying that they were shamed when they went to the doctors looking for checkups. Same thing, like I just said about, women in their 40s and 50s. They
Yeah.
feel like they'll be shamed if they say, oh, yeah, listen, doc, along with my hot flashes and my weight gain, I also want
Right.
to make sure that I preserve the lubrication of my vagina. And they're like, oh my God,
Right.
horrified to even have that conversation. So at
Exactly.
every major institution has carries some of this shame. It's quite profound, actually.
Yeah. So where do you think that comes from? I know that's a big question I just asked you. Where does it, like, where are some of where does this
Oh,
come from that it's such, I mean, and I'm a physician, and we learn
yeah.
about this in medical school, and yeah, are a lot of my colleagues really uncomfortable talking about sexual health? Absolutely. And at the
Mm.
same time, that's crazy because it's part of our system. It's our body, and we're taking care of every other part of your body and your emotions. I mean, where do you think this comes from that you even have physicians who don't want to talk about sex?
Yeah. I mean, I won't say I was arrogant enough to think I could crack this in 2 years. I did my master's at Columbia studying sexual shame, and I tried to go there. I really tried to go into why and where and why we all so traumatized by something that should be so
Right.
natural and is such an innate part of us. Like
Right.
what gives? It is the short answer. It is very complex. There are sociological, economical, anthropological, biological, everything. But fundamentally, I think it's this: sexual energy is deeply powerful, which makes it scary, which makes it something that everybody wants to control. So, from political organizations, sex education is not an education thing, it's a political thing. So from everyone from religion to politics to your parents to your extended family, anybody that wants you to be regulated in a particular way will
Mhm.
go for your sexual energy. And a lot of this was directed towards women. So my study of sexual shame, given that women are such social characters, and shame is a great way to sort of to cut you off at the source, if you will.
Sure.
But I also study a lot of sexual shame in men now. And that's really fascinating as well. And we can go into that. So fundamentally, I would say this: we control it because it's powerful. All the more
Mm,
reason we need to liberate it, right?
yeah. I love that you went there and said that, because actually that's been my theory for a long time, is that if you can, really control people, this is the way you can control them, because
Absolutely.
the sexual energy is so strong. And in women, we create, those of us who are, biologically women, female, born that
Yeah.
way, we have the ability to create that no other human beings do. Males don't have that, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what other way than to control that energy, that creation ability, than to do
Yeah.
this, right?
And I think that, coming to misconceptions, and I don't want to get too philosophical here, you
Yeah.
tell me. I mean, in Tantra, right, which is one of the oldest, most sophisticated integrations of spirituality and sexuality, this fundamental force, it is about unification. It is about the unification of Shiva and Shakti. It is about the unification
Mhm.
of the masculine with the feminine. And we've gone and genderized it and polarized it such that men don't want to touch anything feminine in themselves. And
Mhm.
women feel like they have to over masculinize themselves to survive in this world. And if you ask me, is that why we're sick and isolated and inflamed and depressed? I kind of think so.
Yeah, it's such an interesting conversation about gender, sexuality, feminine and masculine, and how we use it in the West versus, what feminine and masculine really mean, and that it's in all of us. So, I mean, that's a whole nother, we're going to do another
That's why I
whole
said it's
episode on
big.
that, because that's like a whole
Absolutely.
nother episode. But
Absolutely.
let's do this. We're gonna rein it back in, and let's talk about, sort of the topic that we wanted to talk about today, which is,
Sure.
how does sexual health contribute to your overall physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And so, like, maybe let's go through that, one by one, so we can just sort of have this episode be sort of a primer for people to really understand why sexual health is so important for our overall health. Would that be okay if we just do that? And we're going to
Yeah.
go into
Yeah.
all those other really esoteric conversations and discussions, because I think those are really, really important, on another episode. Is that
No,
a deal with
I
you?
agree. In
Okay.
your lifetime and mine, we will be scratching away at this. I'm sure it's massive.
Exactly. So let's start with, the physical health benefits. What are
Sure,
some of the physical health benefits that are associated with maintaining just a healthy sexual life?
sure. And let me just point out that I think it was the World Health Organization that declared something as recently as 2012 that, hey, guess what, sexual wellness is related to overall wellness. And we're all like, oh yeah, well, hallelujah, right? You're welcome,
Yeah,
about
right.
time. I think it's great to go there, because I think that we've forgotten that this is actually good for us. Part of it is the shame. Like, I know in my life, even though sexuality was such a big part of who I was, I felt kind of frivolous if I put it front and center, even in my relationships. People always be like, oh, sex is not the only thing in a relationship. Sure, it's not, but it's a bloody important component, right? So it's about
Mhm.
finding that balance.